You're listening to the Long Game Podcast. I'm your host, Sandra Scaiano. I've been a longtime fan of morning pages, the concept that debuted in Julia Cameron's book, The Artist's Way. I was introduced to the book shortly after graduating college by my best friend, Krysty, who has been a major force in all of my formative years. You know, she's always encouraged my creative and analytic thoughts. So it's quite fitting that she was the one who introduced me to this book and influenced me with expressing my thoughts through journaling. Thank you, girl, for always supporting me on my journey. So with morning pages, you wake up and you write out 3 full pages longhand. You write stream of consciousness, whatever thoughts are coming to you. And I'm quoting Julia Cameron now. There is no wrong way to do morning pages. They are not high art. They are not even writing. They are about anything and everything that crosses your mind, and they are there for your eyes only. Morning pages provoke, clarify, comfort, cajole, prioritize, and synchronize the day at hand. Do not overthink morning pages. Just put 3 pages of anything on the page and then do 3 more pages tomorrow. So morning pages, they really clear your mind. They are an exercise that makes you have, as Julia Cameron says, more consciousness as you pass through your day. The Artist's Way is about creative recovery and creative flow. It's about working through the places or ways you may be stuck and not creating as an artist. And it's a process that's been used by many more people than just artists. It's like a little bit of a society of sorts. There's a commonality amongst female entrepreneurs who have devoted some part of their time to the Artist's Way's teachings. And I love discovering other women who have and bonding over our shared use and understanding of the morning pages concept. It's all about uncovering, getting unstuck, managing through the tough times you're having, and reaching your goals, all aided through this process. I've been lucky enough to cross paths with people who have created their own methods for using creativity and/or the page as a means for expression and recovery. Today, I'm joined by Krysty Krywko, an artist, communicator, and educator on a mission to help as many humans as possible harness the power of creativity to support their sobriety, recovery, and mental wellness. Krysty's approach includes her clients working with her custom Anchor Pages framework as a way to process feelings and thoughts. And she shows her clients how to use basic art supplies to deepen the experience, creating personal and expressive sketchbooks. As Krysty says, it's not always easy to distill my profession into just a few words, but here's a nutshell equation. 1 part writer, 2 parts coach, and 1 part mixed media artist. I really love this, and I love the style of art that Krysty creates. I have been a longtime fan of creative journals that mesh together paint and ink and found imagery, creating an artistic and sometimes otherworldly creative space on the page. And you will find this as you're strolling through or scrolling through Krysty's Instagram feed. Today, we dig into Krysty's process and some of the outcomes in our conversation. And Krysty opens the conversation with an amazing story of change, one so many of us entrepreneurs may face, but are afraid to act upon. Changing a name that doesn't resonate with us anymore. This is so good. And I know something that we all come up against as we name our businesses and our programs. So I think, Krysty's story is going to help you exhale a little bit. Today, the long game is Anchor Pages with Krysty Krywko. You're listening to the Long Game Podcast with Sandra Scaiano. In a world where everyone is doing, it's easy to get lost in a sea of comparison, secret tricks, and promises of overnight success. The long game is my approach to business. The actual day in and day out philosophy that you have to show up, you have to do the work, and there's no quick fixes for long-term success. I'm a web designer, digital strategist, and energetic thinker, and I'm here to share the process and lessons I experience with my clients daily who are going through the same struggles of building a business as you are. We'll hear from successful entrepreneurs sharing their long game strategies, and I'm fun, so we're going to have a little fun along the way too. Thanks for being here. Let's get to today's episode. Well, hello, everyone. I am so excited for today. We have Krysty Krywko with us, who is an award-winning communicator, coach, and artist. She has been developing for the past 15 years using creativity as a way in her educational endeavors, right? Creativity is serious fun. And I'm also really drawn to her artwork. So we're going to talk about a few things today. And, one of the things besides Krysty's framework that she calls the anchor pages is Krysty had a big epiphany in the past year where she has, after over a decade in her business, has changed her name. And, I was really drawn to her story with this because I want to talk about how, I'm always saying everything's malleable, right? And now that's like the most major thing. And how malleable is it? But it's doable. So Krysty's going to share her experience with us today. So thank you for being here, Krysty.
Thank you for having me, Sandra. I'm really excited for this conversation.
I'm always talking long game. So, we're name is like the biggest long game piece, right? Like, how does that?
Yeah. Especially,
so tell us a little bit, give us a little history.
I mean, I have a name too, Krysty Krywko is not an easy name to spell or kind of remember. So I feel like that was going against me from the start. So when I was thinking of trying to find an identity to fit into with my business. And when I first started working with it, I did work under my name for a long time, but then that became like, no, I want to have a brand. I want to have this different presence.
And something so memorable.
Right. And then I worked under, that was probably about 5 years ago when I started using the Creative Badass as my sort of online personality / presence. And that really grew out of the stage I was in my life. I had just gone through a divorce and I was really working on that, shifting my identity, rebuilding myself. And I felt, I need to be that badass. Like that's me. I'm this like coming out of the gates fighting kind of thing. And that name really fit me for a while.
And it was pretty timely. I mean, that is like it was before everything was badass,
Right.
It was kind of coming up. And it's a pretty timely, moniker.
Yes, absolutely. That's so funny because I had just read How to Be a Badass book, Jen Sincero's book. And I had this creative background. So I was like, hey, I'm just going to put those two words together and see what happens. And it was kind of fun and a little bit of edgy. And then it just, in the last 6 months, I'm like, this does not fit me anymore. Like I don't want, and it became really heavy. It became I don't want to carry around that name anymore. It's not me. It's not sort of where I want to sort of be in this space. But it was really emotional to let it go. Like it was because I have everything, my logo, my website, my social media presence is all tied up in that name. And I was like, wait a minute, if I'm not the creative badass, then who am I?
That was like an existential question. Wait a minute. But, before you even go on to the next part of the story, let's just talk about how like you go through these evolutions and phases in your business when you were in it. And so like that could really fit and be good for a while. And then it is okay to change, right? Like nothing happened. The world didn't implode. I mean, it could have been frustrating, a pain in the ass, and we'll hear that part. But is it, I think you're better off going forward rather than holding yourself back. Like Creative Badass probably gave you some freedom to like be who you wanted to be and go forward with it at that time.
Yeah. But then, it's exactly what it was doing. It was holding me back in going to the next phase of who I wanted to be and the work that I wanted to do. So, it took me a while to sort of get to that place of like, it's okay to just release it and let it go. And that was really powerful though, when I finally stepped into like the new identity, which my new umbrella is Purple Dog Creative, which speaks a lot of just what the space that I want to move into. But it's a scary thing. Like
it's
that.
Creative in its own way. Right. And it's such it's such a leap, right? It shows that you're in a different space now.
Yes.
Right.
And I felt like the Creative Badass it was me. The focus was me, even though really my business was for others. The Purple Dog Creative, I feel, has just an umbrella sort of effect. Like I'm bringing everybody along for the ride. The Creative Badass to me was just like a very, it was a personal thing. And I needed that name to like survive the last 5 years, but I feel like I'm just in a different space and a different energy in my business. And yeah, the world did not stop. Nothing ended. I had a big thing, like, how do I let, the people who follow me, the clients I work with, know about this change? And as I started talking about it, and I did a little video on my Instagram, people really were just like, oh my God, I love it. It's so great. I'm super excited for this new phase for you. Whereas before I was like, ooh, I'm going to be letting everybody down. Like if I make this change. But no, people got the energy. They got the vibe that I was putting out. And they're like, hey, we're in this. We don't care what your name is. We're like following.
Right, exactly. Right, yeah. Totally. And I think it's interesting too, because, that also probably was accompanied by a shift in or like a reanalyzation of your core values and like what you wanted to bring forth. Right. So like we all go through that, and we can go through that in our business, whether there's a name change or not, but then you are thinking and feeling differently, and this was just a manifestation, a visual manifestation in a way of like that reevaluation of it's not about me, it's about us and that whole step piece. So
absolutely. And I think, I didn't allow myself to go there for a while because, that mindset as an entrepreneur, like, no, this is the thing I chose. This is the thing I have to do. I have to do this until I retire or whatever.
Seriously.
So like, you put in your head.
You just put that's my flag in the ground.
Right. Yes. And it's like, no, I can change my mind anytime I want to change my mind. I mean, big corporations do it all the time. Yeah. Like, why can't I do this? So once I sort of moved into that mindset, it was like, oh, okay. Like, why was I making it so hard for myself?
Totally. Because we do. And we put all of those pressures and that outside what other people from the external world are going to look at us and think. For me, I'm so happy to hear that. And I was so drawn to your story. And I even love the way that you went like live video to announce it, right? Like, I'm sure there's emails to clients and different things too, but like, that was really engaging to really hear your story and why, and, for you to personally represent it, I think was fitting for the next phase as well. Like, okay, this is who I am.
Yeah, that was really important, that video. Like I put that video off for probably a good month. I was like, I'll do it. I haven't washed my hair today, so I can't do the video. I'll do it next week. They did it, whatever. And then I was like, no, I just have to do that video. So I just sat down, turned the camera on, and it was like a one take. But I needed to do, and once I did that, the release that I felt was like, why was I making it? Like, it's not like.
Right. And then everybody writes, congratulations. I'm so happy for you. You rock. Okay. And you're like, wait, okay. This is what was behind door number one.
Yes.
What was I so afraid of?
Yeah.
And for the listeners,
once I did that, that really made a big difference in, just in my mindset. And then I was like, okay, now I can do what I've been wanting to do.
Good for you. So, yeah, totally. And for the listeners, I'm going to link to that video just so everyone has a reference of what we're talking about. And, because that is a thing. Like, I work with people every day who are coming up with programs and courses or their businesses. And it's like, what do I name it? And I went through several names before I ended up at like Sandra Sky, which, ended up being short because no one can really pronounce my last name. Right. So it's like, okay, that kind of worked. But I had a few things and I'm like, what was even that? Like, it was only a secret. I knew what it meant. And then I was like, that doesn't mean anything to anybody. I mean, I had one, company for a while called Blue Babushka. And I was like, okay, that means nothing to anybody else. Like, it's clever and creative, but like, everybody's like, why? And so we go through these things. And that's what I, try and tell people, like, it's normal to evolve and to put something out there so that you can go forward. Right.
Yeah.
So that it doesn't impede your progress.
And not overthinking those things, because then that's when you get stuck in like that busy work, like, oh, my website's not perfect. I don't have the perfect this, but I try to just keep telling myself that there's somebody out there waiting for what I do. And if I don't get it out, they're not going to have that service, or they're not going to have, access to what I bring them. So I think that I used to get so stuck in that though, too. I think, it's something I think you learn along the journey, but not getting stuck in having like the perfect logo. Like I don't have a logo designed for my new name yet. And that's okay. Like, it's fine. I don't think that's what clients are looking at me for is, for my logo. Maybe some are attracted to that, but that's not what I do. So I think, just giving ourselves that permission to just be like, hey, I'm putting something together and, the people, I'll find the people who need me. Like that's kind of what it comes down to.
And I think it comes with experience a little bit, just getting to that. You need to go through the phases of freaking out all the time about every little thing and then realize like, that's not how I want to live my life, or that's not why I got into this. And, even now with my clients, sometimes like, they have a lot of clients. So I'm in part of that. And sometimes somebody will be like, hey, this. And I'm like, it's not the end of the world. I'll go in and fix it. Like sometimes things just have to be fixed. Like, okay, it's fixed. We're done. Like, why are we freaking out? I'm not freaking out anymore. I have decided in my business, there are things that I'm only freaking out about major. Anything minor, I am not freaking out about anymore.
That's probably a good way to approach it.
It took me 12, plus my whole corporate career to get to that. Yeah. I was that person who I don't even like to show up at work 2 minutes late. I was like, they're going to get mad at me, put too much pressure. So it's taken a while to get there. So so tell us, and I'm also curious too, if you used some of your own framework and process to kind of come to that, tell us about the anchor pages and what you do to how to really bring creativity into people working out some of their issues, so to speak.
Yeah. So the anchor pages, and it's funny because I do use my own framework because that's awesome. What it really came out of. Like I'm client zero for all the work that I'm doing. So the anchor pages are a place you come to. And so like a series of questions you ask yourself or a series of prompts. You come to the page just like where you are, like, how am I feeling like right here, right now? Like what is going on? It's, 2 minutes per prompt type of thing. You can use it however you want to, but it's just saying, how this is how I'm feeling right now. And then how do I want to feel? That's like the next thing. Because I think the first step is just like naming and claiming those emotions. Like this is how I'm feeling now, frazzled, unorganized, or whatever they might be. How do I want to feel? I want to feel calm, energized. And then the next step is the action sort of step. Like, okay, what actions do I need to take to feel that way? And usually they're pretty small actions you need to take. And I think that I really emphasize that it's not always this big dramatic thing that you have to go through. It can literally just be as simple as, oh, I could go walk around the block for 15 minutes. That's going to help me calm down and change my energy. Like it can be that simple, or it can be like, no, I need to write out a 15-page, business plan because that's what I need to help me feel calm and energized and organized. So I think that there's so many different ways that people can use it. I'm shifting into the space of sobriety and recovery because to me, that is such a huge space where rebuilding yourself and working on your feelings and figuring out how to process those feelings. I think that all gets so stuck in that space. So that is an area where I am really shifting my focus into and using creativity as like that touchstone, as a building block, as a place to rebuild yourself. So the anchor pages all take place in a sketchbook.
Oh, cool.
That's the main thing I use to help my clients because it becomes, I know people can't see it, but it starts to look like this, like a place where your questions are, where your writing is, where you can go to when you are having that really shitty moment. You can go to your sketchbook and there's sort of, that framework helps you contain things. Because I think if you go to a journal or a sketchbook without a framework, sometimes you can't even get your thoughts on a page because you're so scattered.
Right. It's like, what should I put down first? I recently had
you're overthinking.
Right.
That.
Exactly. Yeah. I'm like, I don't know where to start with that. And I love that when you do that in a sketchbook, so this is unlined and it allows for that creative space. I'm really drawn to that type of artwork, that multimedia, that, paint on the bottom and cut out some text and push it on top and layers of things. And that really allows, and we will link to your Instagram where there's a lot of visual examples of this type of work that you do.
Yeah.
And I love that it creates like, it now is a piece of art in itself, like the whole book. You've now processed emotions into artwork and creativity, and it is actually a piece that someone can hold, right, for themselves.
Right. It becomes like a roadmap. I really feel like people are writing their own self-help book when they're doing this working sketchbook. It's sort of that, it becomes just a place where you can experiment, where you can figure out who you are, you can figure out what you want to do, you can sort of work through things from the past or the present. But the anchor pages always start just like with here and now. And then you can move forward and think about the future, or, go back into the past. You have the option to go either way.
And, I know that you have this sobriety and recovery focus, but have you found that with the past 2 years of COVID, that there's also a need there in terms of people wanting to work things out, emotions and feelings out, because of there's so much we've been through as a society together. Like, I immediately think this is a great passage for people to be able to help move them through some of their emotions that they're feeling related to COVID.
Absolutely. One of the things I say a lot is everybody's recovering from something. And it's true, whether you're recovering from a shitty marriage, or recovering from got laid off at work, or you're recovering from your kids going to college, or like you're always
right, or your childhood, or your right. I mean, wow.
Absolutely. So I think that is exactly how this work comes into sort of like more of the mainstream, I guess. I feel there's such a disconnect between like this recovery movement, and the work I do with sobriety and recovery is very important work for me. But I think that when you're in sort of like the mainstream, you don't have access to a lot of the tools and the framework of recovery, but yet you're recovering from whatever it is. You're recovering from, you lost a family member during COVID. You're recovering from that. But you don't have the access to the tools that you need to help your recovery. So that is a lot of the work that I do with these anchor pages and with the sketchbook, is I help people with the tools to move through the recovery. I feel like we're all coming into this period of grief.
And stress. I mean, it's stressed our bodies.
Yeah. Everybody, like our kids are coming out of that. It just goes through the generations. So I think we don't have those tools, or we don't always have access to those tools, or we make those tools like super complicated and sometimes inaccessible for people to get to. So I think that this is a really great way to sort of jumpstart, recovering from whatever it is you're recovering from.
Right, exactly. We all have our ish. And, you bring up another good point of accessibility in this. Like, you don't need anything but paper and pen or something like that. You can start with a pencil and doodle, right? You don't have to have paints and have some sort of skill.
Everything I use is, if you have children, they probably have craft materials at home. I use inexpensive acrylic paint from, you get at Target, get it at Michael's. I use tons of recycled pictures, magazines, newspapers. I don't even use a paintbrush. I use a expired gift card to help to put the paint around. Nice. Like it's stuff you have. And I do that on purpose because, and you as an artist yourself, you might have had that experience. Like there's nothing that drives me crazy when I go to an art class and I have to, or a creativity workshop or something, and I have to spend, $200 on materials like that. So I really start with where people are, what they have. If you want to add super extra fancy stuff, great. But that is certainly not a requirement for this. Yes, this is just like where everybody enters skill level and access to materials, because it doesn't need to be that complicated. And
when you're working with people, are you, to me, I look at your Instagram page and it's inspiring. Like it gives me ideas of like, or I can interpret myself in another way. So are you doing tutorials as well? Like in terms of that art making, like if someone says, I know, like I admire the process or, but how do I get it out of me? Right? How do I create? Maybe that's the better answer, the better question. Do you show them how you work? Do you kind of give them a boost in some way? Because that, when you're stuck in all kinds of things, you're just stuck, right? So like, how do you manifest to bring the creativity out?
Yeah. So I'm working on my YouTube channel. It is a work in progress. But yes, I've done a few different things. And I have one thing that I'm just in the process of launching it's a free 5-day. I walk you through the steps over a series of like a video every day just for 5 days. And that's something that I'm in the process of working on and getting out. But yeah, I start with the, like, here's the blank page, which is scary. Looking at a blank page is very scary because it's like, I don't want to do it wrong. I don't know what to do. And it's interesting when I work with adults, I get so many questions about like, is this right? What should I do? When I work with kids, they don't really care what I have to say, right? Like they're just doing it. But I think as adults, we are so good at censoring ourselves before we start, or criticizing or editing ourselves before we even start. So the first thing I do is always walk people through getting something on that page, taking a tube of paint, splat and spraying it around, because then it's not blank anymore. It doesn't look as scary. Color on there. And then I get them writing on that page, usually using a prompt, a very open-ended prompt that everybody can respond to in the way that works for them. And then it's about trying to find some images that go with that, or where do you want to take this page next? Like it's really a free form and there's no rules, which I think frustrates a lot of people.
I was going to say that can be kind of scary. Like, give me some parameters to get me right.
I'm always just like, it's your page. There's no rules. Like what works for you? Because I think that intuitively we usually know the answer, but we want that like outside confirmation and validation. And I get that. But this is truly a place that is your process. You are taking it where your page should not look anything like mine.
Totally.
Or like the person next to you. When I teach in-person workshops, like everybody should leave with a page that looks totally different. It's not like the paint and sip classes, everybody leaves with a similar type of thing. Right. Yours should absolutely look like your own. And I think that is where so much of the power lies, because it has access to that creativity, but it's sort of been shut off over years and decades of people telling you, or you judging yourself against someone else's creativity. But it's really so personal.
Totally. And that's where you start to emerge from your past, right? You start to address it. You start to brush a paint stroke.
Yep.
Those emotions can go with that. For me, I think, I'm like, how would I get started? I mean, I would just have a stack of, 4x6 photographs that I would then be like, okay, this one, and then layering it on top. I know that would be my starting point of things.
I love it.
And I always say to people, like, I say sometimes that go into the Walgreens and they have these specials, upload all these photos and they're like 20 cents, 10 cents for 100, it's like, okay, there you go for like, however, $25 or whatever it is, you've got your stack of photos to be able to like start as a starting point to create. Like that would be for me. Yeah. How that comes about. Cause, and I also want to mention that how is this different in some ways from like, a lot of people do vision boards, right? And so there's that vision board piece that I think people could relate this to in some ways. So how does it differ in the work that you do?
I've never been a huge vision boarder person, but I do know lots of people that do use them and they work for them, and that's great. I find like a vision board can be there's like a bit of perfection in the vision board, like that it has to look a certain way, or the pictures have to be very visually appealing, or you know what I mean? Like, I feel like there's a little bit of perfection in some of the vision boards. And then I think sometimes it depends on how to use it, but it can be sort of materialistically driven. Like, if I put the, fancy speedboat and the Hawaiian vacation and like the, whatever the purse of the moment is, I don't know, but you know what I mean? I think that be like very like materialistic things, as opposed to, I need to process my grief, or I need to work through this, or I have this dream, but I don't even really know what it's looking like yet. So I can't put that in a vision board because I don't really know what it looks like yet. Whereas in the sketchbook, it's messy, It's this where you are. I have had some people use it as a vision board. One woman, she was super surprised. She decided after an exercise we did, she was like, wow, I want to take a year off and go work in Bali. Like, I want to go do that. And she did it. But she was so surprised that even came out of her head after the exercise we did. And like,
wow.
In the sketchbook. So I think sometimes, most of the times, actually, people I work with really surprise themselves, because this kind of gets to that layer of stuff that's underneath all the noise your brain is making all day, every day with other people's stuff. Like, you can really get to your true things that are driving you in the sketchbook. So,
and that's an amazing point that you bring up. Like, we do all day deal with other people's stuff. Yes. Right? We're not dealing with our own stuff. You have clients, you have a job, you have a family to cook for. You're like, that's their stuff. You're always dealing. So this is a nice reflection time for yourself as well.
Yeah. And I think we don't do that. I mean, we don't do that as moms. We're busy recording the lives of our children or the lives of our partners or the lives of our pets. You know what I mean? But we're not sort of recording our own lives. And that's what the sketchbook can really, the way that I teach it, it really starts to build a record of who you are, of things that are important for you, of places you're holding yourself back. And I think, I know when I look at mine, and I have a whole stack of them from years and years, but I can look through them and be like, oh my God, I am still dragging around this same thing. Like, I need to work through this. Or I can look and say like, wow, I used to think that I have come so far. And it's like that record, because we don't really have that. We often do think, oh, we're so, that we're so stuck, but it gives you that evidence. Like, no, you're not as stuck as you think you are.
Right.
Like, you have made huge progress in this area. Yeah. Maybe there's this one area that's still not resolved, but you're working that out. So.
Yeah. And that woman in Bali who's going to Bali, this could be such a travel journal type of thing. Like, you just can take it as you go as well and record those experiences or, along the way.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love that whole, it's condensed. You can take it with you. It can be with you at the coffee shop while you're just taking your 1 hour before you start your whole day kind of thing.
Absolutely.
I need to do this. I'm just going to say I'm in on your 5-day whenever it's ready. And I'm going to take my, audience and put it up there for them as well, because the way that you work and how you present this really speaks to me. And it's something that's been missing from my life, right? Like, it's, we hear so much like, what's your morning thing? And it's like, okay, that's not my morning thing. And that doesn't mean this has to be it, because it might not be in the morning, but like, we need to do that reflective time for ourselves.
Yeah. And it becomes a way, like, when the more you do, like with anything, right? The more you do it, the deeper you can get. And I know when I'm feeling anxious about something, when I come to the page and I just put the paint on, and when you're using the expired gift card, it makes a noise across the page that becomes, to me, it's like a meditative practice. It becomes like that. It's like, I'm truly just here right now with this sketchbook. I'm not thinking about the fight I just had with my teenager or the fact that I have to go walk the dog and it's raining out. Like, I'm not thinking about that stuff. I'm just right here. And sometimes I set a timer for, it's only 10 minutes that I have some days. Some days I can do it for an hour, but whatever it is, it takes me away from like all the stuff that's swirling around outside my brain and just brings me those 10 minutes of like, okay, I got this.
Presence.
I'm good. Yeah.
Yeah. I think we all need that in our lives a little bit.
Yeah.
I'm going to bring it back to, we're all recovering from something, right?
Yeah.
It's really
absolutely
how it comes back comes back around. Well, I am definitely going to have all of the links to everything. And when the 5-day challenge is ready, we're going to add it to the show notes page, but I'm also going to promote it because this is something that I think everybody needs to reflect on and take part in and let their creativity guide them a little bit, even when they think they don't have any, right?
And we're not really allowed, there's no spaces for us to sort of play and have those experiences. And I think sometimes even when you go to you take a workshop, maybe like at a continuing education program or something, like it's still so product driven. And this is just really process driven creativity where there's no outcome. I mean, maybe you do end up with a page you love and you want to frame it, or you want to put it on Instagram, or you want to show somebody. But most of this stuff that I do, I don't show anybody because it's just my process stuff that I'm going through. It's not like, look at the beautiful picture I did. Although sometimes I do I'm like, oh, wow, I really like how that turned out.
That came out good, right.
That's not the point of it. You know what I mean?
Right. But that is it's another form of exercise. It's just a different exercise. It's the same as like, hey, I could go and have a run, or I could go and sit down for 10 minutes. And I love the concept that it's multisensory, right? It's not just visual. It's not just your thought. It's the sound. It's the motion. It's all of those pieces. So, and that's really what creativity is, right? It brings all of those things together. Mm-hmm. And if it can help you move forward and help you work with whatever you're, tangled up in your head, and in your heart, that's why I think we all need it. So yeah, I'm definitely game for it. And maybe we can do a little like all together kind of thing.
Oh my God, that would be so fun.
So,
yeah.
And this, to wrap up is really, you've got to give attention to these areas, right? Like we tend to move so fast and, this is our attention in another way. And I love that it has a creative piece to it and not just, some sort of regiment that someone's telling you, it's your own creativity coming through in that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I think we get stuck in consuming too much. Mm-hmm. When you're consuming Instagram, you're consuming all that stuff. You need to create a little bit more because it's totally different energy. Like if you're looking to be inspired, you can usually inspire yourself in this kind of work. I think when you're on Instagram, maybe you come away feeling a little bit better, but usually you don't.
Right. Well, you've got to really seek out your feed of artists versus, like I don't think everyone has art in their feed in that way. They haven't sought it out. Maybe they have influencers who, there's a whole difference there. So
yeah, absolutely.
Well, awesome. I mean, I really want to thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story and inspiring us to keep being malleable, to choose the path to go on it. And then it's okay to untangle yourself and go in another direction. Thank you so much for coming on. And we're going to have links to everything where everybody can find you.
Thank you. This is a great conversation. I want it just to keep going, but there'll be a part 2. We'll figure that out. But it's so, I don't know, which is so great. So thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Awesome. We'll see you guys next week. Thanks for joining me today. You can access more info in the show notes at thelonggamepodcast.net. If today's show connected with you in some way, please share it with your friends or hop on iTunes and leave me a review. Until next time, keep playing the long game. This podcast is part of the Sound Advice FM network. Sound Advice FM. Women's voices amplified.